So Jesus speaks about material goods, money. No one is untouched by concerns about money. Do we have enough? Do we have more than enough? What do we do with that? How does our faith interact with our money and our gifts and our possessions? See, in this culture, we don't get taught a lot about that. With my background being in finance, I speak about money maybe more than people find socially acceptable because they make that face. Did you really talk about money in public? And I think that there were similar concerns back during the time of this text, because Luke talks about how someone yells out to Jesus an inheritance question. Jesus is probably in a group of about 2,000 people listening to him speak, and he yells out kind of a personal situation inheritance question. And no rabbis were asked about this quite frequently because, this is part of the law. Inheritance was part of the law. Can you make a decision, Rabbi? Well, this wasn't the time nor the place, and in fact, this wasn't really Jesus' role. Jesus was doing something a little different, not settling inheritance disputes. So Jesus kind of brushes his question aside about inheritance and instead starts speaking about greed. And I think that Jesus has done what he always does, which is strike at the heart of the matter. So the heart of the matter was a question about greed. He uses a parable in this teaching, as he uses parables quite frequently. But in this particular parable, you find only one of the only 3 locations that Jesus refers to someone as a fool. This is worth taking note. Why did Jesus call him a fool, and how can I avoid being part of the fool category in the eyes of the Lord? This is worth considering. So Jesus refers to the person in this parable as a fool. However, listening to the story about this rich fool is difficult because culturally, many of us in this North American culture would stop and say, I don't get it. What's the rich fool part? I mean, he didn't do anything illegal to gain wealth. He didn't do anything immoral. The crops grew. He cared for them. In fact, he cared for them, so he was going to put up another barn for them. This seems responsible. Isn't this what the rest of us would do? Well, this particular farmer, he said, I say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. This is his idea. Now, Jesus did enough of eating, drinking, and being merry himself. He had perfectly great social times with the disciples and other people. That can't be the problem. And the man was saving up money in the form of food, in the form of wealth. This would be the equivalent of someone saying, my job did really well this year. I made a lot of money, so I put a lot in savings. I'm ready for retirement and to enjoy my golden years. What's the problem here? This doesn't fit with our scope of concern in this world. Well, this isn't a problem about wealth, because this rich farmer grew materials on earth that God made, with the sun that God made come, with the seeds that God made, with the rain that God sent. This is wealth that came from God. The wealth isn't the problem. In fact, God is not anti-wealth. Sit on that statement for a minute. Because I know that there's enough controversy out there, but God is not anti-wealth. God blessed this man with his wealth. So what is the concern? If the bumper crop isn't the concern, and really neither are the barns, what is the concern? The concern is the man. What is he focused on? What are his priorities? What is his life angled towards? Well, he had had a conversation only with himself. He says, his crops, his barns, his future, his wealth. He only converses with himself about what to do with his own things. You would wonder if he might question the Lord. You have blessed me, Lord. How can I be a blessing to others? You have gifted me, Lord. What would you have me do? Maybe he should have brought God into the conversation when he is blessed. In the end of this parable, you see that there is something that this rich man did not prepare for. He had prepared for a long and lucrative retirement, but he had not prepared for a reckoning with God. And at the end of this passage, this parable, Jesus said that his life was going to be taken of him that night. Now I have to admit, not the first time I read this, but when I read this when I was younger, I'm like, oh, he's in so much trouble, he's going to die. That's not the point. The point isn't that Jesus is punishing him. That is not the point. The point is, in fact, that we never know. Our days are numbered. We never know. You know, people get older, health decreases, hospice comes in, all of those things happen, and we can see it coming. But then every week we have prayers for the one we didn't expect. That comes too. And in this parable, this man was the one that he didn't expect. Now my life isn't going to be called from God. Not now. I don't have to think about that now. Which is why he invested all of his energy in the here and now. Things that are of this life, not things that are eternal. And Jesus calls us to look at things that are eternal. He calls us to invest in things that will last, not things that will fall away. Yet, we look at this man who is supposed to be greedy. I have a hard time seeing all the greed. I do. I look at it, and you know what I think? With my American culture mind, you know what I think? I think this is a self-made man. If you ask him, he did hard work, and he produced, and he saved, and he did. And isn't the self-made man the American hero? Isn't he the Rockefellers and the people that pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, worked hard, earned money, saved it, and made their own luck and their own future? Yet there's a problem with that as well. When we are a self-made person, we rely on ourselves. Our security is in our possessions, our wealth, our own abilities. And if that is where our security lies, we will never, ever be secure. Our security doesn't come from possessions. It doesn't come from wealth or saving for our own future. Our security comes from the hand of the Lord. This is where we find security. Jesus says that a life does not consist of abundant possessions. It consists instead, church, of a relationship with the Lord. And therefore, it's foolish to keep possessions just to ourselves. Possessions are to be shared. Jesus warns that we are to be on guard against greed. How much easier is it to see greed in someone besides oneself? Greed doesn't jump right out at you, because greed feels like security when it's yourself. It feels like being wise, and that's what this man thought as well. However, he had a new perspective. When Jesus said that today your life will be called from you, he had a new perspective. I have had the honor of spending time with many people when they were nearing the end of their lives. People who have had celebrations, people who have had regrets, people who have had concerns, people who have sought forgiveness. In those people, I have heard many regrets. One regret that I have never heard is that I regret that I have been generous. I regret that I have given so much. I wish that I had kept more for myself. Never have I heard that. In fact, when people talk about generosity, that is the moment where they talk about things and smile. I gave to this charity and they did this good work. I gave to this scholarship program and someone was educated. This is a point that makes people smile and find value in their lives. This generosity is not a point of regret. See, sometimes the end of life gives you a whole new perspective. Recently, I was watching a TED Talk, and there was this scientist that quantified 2,000 obituaries from the New York Times. Unpaid obituaries that were considered news. 2,000 of them. Famous people, non-famous people, and he did this algorithm on them to try to see what was so special that when they passed, their life was newsworthy to hit the New York Times. Do you know the word that showed up over and over again as being the one that made the difference? Help. The word help. Helping someone. Making a difference in the world. Helping. Helping financially, helping with their time, helping with their energy, helping with their dreams, pouring into people and changing the world. This is what showed up as being a noteworthy life, a life that was worth living. How much more so would it be for those of us of faith? How much more as people of God should we be called to be people that help, that are generous with our time, generous with our gifts, generous with our lives? How much more? I spoke to a local small business owner, one that isn't part of our church community, who was speaking to me about how their particular small business can make a difference in the community at large by being part of the social services agencies. And this small business owner said, I have a responsibility to my family. I have a responsibility to provide for them and to make money. But I'm a Christian, and I have a responsibility to my God that He has gifted me talent and time and provision to do things. And so every year, as part of our family's small business, we sit down and we talk about how many of these jobs are we going to commit to do for the social services agency at cost. And when we do those at cost throughout the year, that's the maximum we do. We'll stop at the number we have decided. And whatever God gives us over that amount, that's what we use, providing for our family, blessing our family. Now, certainly they scatter those jobs throughout the year as needed, but they believe that they are beholden both to the provision of their family and to the betterment of the world because they were gifted by God to do both because of their faith in the Lord. I think that that is a balanced look at generosity, a balanced look at who we are called to be as people of faith. See, our lives and our possessions belong to the Lord. And I think that that's what this rich fool missed. I think that the rich fool missed that he was a manager of goods, not the owner. I think that he missed that there were other things that God might want him to do with this wealth. So as I reflect on what we can learn from this rich fool, I think that I might start with considering if we are someone who has more food, more gifts, more blessings than we need. Maybe we shouldn't build bigger barns. Maybe if we have more food, we should build bigger tables. Maybe we're called not to store, but to give. Maybe we're called to be generous. See, I think this is the point of this scripture. Therefore, if we are called to do for others, I think that we need to remember that that comes from our faith in God. Remember that we are blessed so that we can be a blessing. We are given so that we can give, and that we love so that we can love others. In this, I guess, I hope that you don't take this as a mental exercise in generosity. Generosity, great, we're supposed to give, how wonderful, and then you walk out and nothing changes. I hope that you walk out and think, how can I be more generous with what God has given me? My time, my money, my life. How can I give back? Because the Christian walk isn't one of a mental exercise. It's one of going forth and doing what Jesus did. May you do so.